Stage. All right. So you all should be able to see that. So we got a combination, obviously. So when I do the weekly lessons, guys, and then the Rip Dads, I'll give you another option too. You can get on my Monday night mindset calls, which is with a different group. But obviously, we got Shredder people in here. We got Panda. We got Rip Dads. The lessons are the same, guys, as far as what I'm teaching, as far as the mind and the fasting. So tonight, what we're going over, we're going to go over the Panda method. Some of you have been through some of this, but the way I teach these, you have to immerse yourself in this when you are going through it, if you want it to stick. Anything that you're doing, you got to do total immersion, right? Otherwise, you're going to kind of do it halfway and you're not going to really get the results that you should get. So when I go through stuff, that's exactly what I do. Like I'm doing a dry fast this week. So what am I doing today? I'm studying dry fasting, right? I'm studying dry fasting. I'll be studying that the next 3 days as I go through it. It's been a little bit since I've done a long dry fast, but total immersion, right? Because all it is, I'll go over mindset stuff too tonight as well, but all of it is meant for you to be able to form a habit around. If you can't form a habit around it, guys, it doesn't make any sense to do it. Okay. It doesn't make any sense to do it if you can't form a habit around it. So that's everything that we're going to be teaching you and taking you through. So we're going to go through the Panda method. We'll touch on some mindset stuff towards the end. And then next week, it'll be mainly about the mindset and mind mapping and teaching you how your brain forms habits. That's the whole key. If we can help you become more self-aware, which the fasting does to a large degree, and then we start teaching you about the operating system of your brain through mind mapping, that's where you really connect the dots, and then you kind of own this, right? That's what we want. We want you to own this. So let's go over this first. So your body fat, the main reason, guys, that we have body fat is largely as a fuel source. It's not the only reason, it's the main reason. Okay. What does that mean? So even if you only had 10 pounds of fat to lose, okay, each pound equates to 3,500 calorie units, right? So we'll go over the calorie equation and why that's silly and it doesn't work. But I think you all understand that calories do represent energy, but it's not as simple as add calories, take calories away. You've all tried that before. It doesn't work. When I say it doesn't work, you might get short-term results. It's got a 99.9% failure rate, okay, over the long term. So your body fat is a food source. Now you have to give your body a reason to tap into that food source. If we're constantly eating, even if you're eating clean and you're eating well, you will not tap into that food source. And this is what you've experienced in the past. The worst way, guys, to kind of beat any food related issue, like if you have extra weight to lose or you have insulin resistance, is through frequent feeding. Doesn't matter if you're eating well. Frequent feeding will not work. Main reason, before we come back to the body fat, is that food is a drug. Food fits the exact definition of a drug. It affects the internal biochemical and hormonal environment of your body. So food is a very real drug, and it's a drug that most people are not aware is a drug, right? But if you examine your life and you see your approach to food or binge eating or whatever it is, like when people have, sugar addiction, sugar is more powerful on the human brain than cocaine. So I want you to think about that. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not enjoying our food. The exact opposite. I want you to enjoy your food like every meal is the best meal you ever had. And I can honestly tell you that that's how I feel every time I eat. Like when I eat Devin's meal tonight, it's the best meal ever. And I'll be very grateful for it. And it's because of the approach. I'm not constantly eating, right? I'm not constantly jamming food down my mouth 3, 4, 5 times a day. Something that most people take for granted because it's so plentiful, right? They're just constantly eating. So going back to your body fat, even if you only had 10 pounds of body fat to lose, that represents 35,000 calories that you need to rip through, right? You have to give your body a reason to tap into that. When we eat, guys, I don't care what you eat. When we eat, insulin is released. When insulin is released, it signals your body to store and to hold on to whatever it has. So, okay. Insulin is one of the master, I should say, 3 hormones. It's really the only hormone that we can control. Okay, it's the only hormone that we can control because Insulin is released when we eat. So you eat a meal, blood sugar starts going up. You get all these nutrients floating around. Insulin is released by your pancreas, and insulin goes into the body and signals. Okay, so let's store this, lower the blood glucose. Let's store anything that came in. Let me just make sure I got everybody on mute, guys. So anything that comes in, insulin's job is to, hold on here. Insulin's job is to signal, hey, let's lower that blood glucose. Okay. Now, over time, what happens? We develop insulin resistance. And if you are, let's say, as a man, if you are above, I want to say 14%, you have built up insulin resistance. And I would even venture to say if you're above 12%, you have insulin resistance. Women, if you're above 25 to 28, there's insulin resistance built up. So what does that mean? Insulin resistance is when your body becomes resistant to the effects of insulin. So over time, if it took you 5 units of insulin, to make it really simple to understand, if it took you 5 units of insulin to lower your blood glucose and get rid of all the nutrients, put them in the muscle cells and the fat cells, over time now it takes you 10 units to get rid of the same amount of food. And then it takes you 15 units and then 20 units to the point where you become resistant to the effects of insulin. So you've probably heard of that term, insulin resistance. When you go down that path, that's when you become pre-diabetic or diabetic, right? And type 2 diabetes and even type 1 can be very, very easily dealt with the fasting that I teach. But when you go down that path, and so what I was going to say, there's type 2, you can completely reverse. There is no reason for anybody to suffer with type 2 diabetes once they start fasting this way. You become resistant to that effect. So what do the doctors do? And I really want to hammer this insulin point home to you because then you're going to own it. They'll put these patients on insulin, right? So they're giving them the thing they've already become resistant to. Now, what is that insulin doing? That insulin is now jamming all this blood glucose that's very toxic, this sugar, if we don't do anything with it, starts jamming it in places it shouldn't be, like your fingers, your toes, and your eyeballs. This is why diabetics, a lot of times, will have to get amputations of their fingers, toes, or why they might go blind. The blood glucose is so high, and now this insulin, this excess insulin, is trying to jam it, put it anywhere it can fit it, instead of solving the actual problem, which is let's heal your insulin resistance, not add more insulin to the mix. So how do we heal insulin resistance? We fast. We want you to become more insulin sensitive. Now, when you become more insulin sensitive, you're healthier across the board. There's no doubt about it. Every disease known to mankind, the root cause of it is insulin resistance. Every single disease known to mankind. Insulin resistance and inflammation are essentially the same thing. So I want you to link that in your head. So that's a little bit about insulin. Now, when you wake up in the morning, you have a hormone called cortisol, which you might have heard of. We want that to actually be at its peak towards the morning, right? That's what should wake us up naturally. It's an alertness hormone, a stress hormone. It's for us to wake up, gather our bearings, go back thousands of years, the way that we were wired, right? You have to see if there's any threats. Where are you going to gather food for the day? Is everybody safe? So we want this alertness hormone, this cortisol, to be at its peak level in the morning. Again, if you were getting optimal sleep, that's what should actually wake you up. It's when cortisol hits its peak. Now, if we eat a typical breakfast, like most people have been told is the most important meal of the day, they wake up, they eat within an hour, insulin's going to go up, cortisol is going to come back down. You've shut off any fat burning for the day. It's done. You're done with it. Okay. So keep that in mind. If you just look at the hormones, fasting is a very natural thing. And it's the way the human body is designed to eat. I don't care who you are, you should be fasting. I can say that with 100% confidence. Now, if you just want to make good food choices, the main thing I would tell you, eat more fruit. Okay, it would be that simple. Start eating more fruit. We went over how food is a drug, and I want you to be aware of that. Now, hunger. So one of the biggest enemies that you're going to have in your mind, right, it all comes down to this, is hunger pangs. Hunger pangs, so there's something called food entrainment patterns. So I put that right here, entrainment patterns. So when you trained your body to expect food over the years, guess what? You're going to release hunger signals at those times. Okay, you're going to release hunger signals. And it's going to be momentary hunger. Hunger and appetite are not the same thing. Do not get them confused. Hunger is a feeling. I want you to really think of hunger as an emotion. Stress will increase hunger. Lack of sleep will wreak havoc with your hunger signals. So be mindful of that. If you see a commercial, you smell food, guess what? You're going to release hunger signals. Now, even when I do longer fast, 5-day fast, 4-day fast, if you add it up to total hunger that I felt in a 5-day fast over the 5 days, it doesn't even total 10 minutes. It's a very momentary thing, but people cave as soon as they feel the slightest discomfort. So the reframing that I need you to do with hunger in your head, guys, is when you feel hunger, that's what fat loss feels like. That's what I need you to tell yourself. This is fat loss happening. Completely flip it on its head. And that was something I started doing when I was competing, right? Because it was such a mental game. But now I see how clearly that it's all a mental game with this, right? You have to own that. This is what fat loss feels like. As soon as you feel that hunger, that's where you got to go to. It's a good thing. Embrace it and stay busy, get moving, and it goes away. Now, the juice I'll go over at the end, what we want you drinking as far as the salts will help a lot with that. When we do a typical North American diet, cutting out stuff like carbohydrates, trying to attempt something like keto, playing the caloric game, when external food is still our main energy source, okay? Couple things happen. Metabolic rate is going to go down to match what you're putting in. We've all experienced this. You cut calories, and this happened to me with competing, right? I would be eating 13, 14, 1,500 calories a day, which is nothing. That's literally starvation mode, which people get confused with fasting, which I'll go over in a second. What would happen, you cut the calories, you drop weight. All of a sudden it stalls out. Now what? Boom, cut again, drops again. To the point where I was put in that situation because I'd wrecked my metabolism so bad that I couldn't get lean unless I was eating such a minimal amount of food. And I'm a pretty big guy. I weigh 230 pounds. So when you do a typical North American diet, metabolic rate's going to come down and your main hunger hormone, ghrelin, is going to continue to rise. This is one of the main reasons you will never succeed on a typical North American diet. I don't care how much discipline you have. You're fighting your biochemistry of your body. Now, when we fast, and I'm talking about fasting, I'm not talking about a 16-hour fast, guys. That's better than eating multiple times a day. It's not going to do anything for you, though, as far as changing your body, right? It's not going to do anything. When we get into like one meal a day and beyond, metabolic rate goes up 5 to 13%, and hunger hormones, your main one, ghrelin, goes down. The exact opposite thing happens when you do longer fasting versus a typical North American diet. The exact opposite thing. It's incredibly powerful. You just have to get your mind around this idea that you're going to be breaking away from food for a period of time. You're going to get withdrawal symptoms if this is new to you. Again, any drug that you come off, you're going to get withdrawal symptoms. They're very short-lived. I haven't had anybody that's gone through any of these programs. Panda is where we really hyper-focus on the fasting, where these symptoms have lasted more than 2 days. They'll be gone quick. So don't panic. And listen, one of the other things, one of the main symptoms, right? People can say, oh, I get hypoglycemic, I get low blood sugar. No, you don't. It's an incredibly rare condition to get true hypoglycemia. What happens, you're getting withdrawal symptoms. Now you have a hormone called glucagon. Glucagon, it's the opposite of insulin. What glucagon does, it keeps your blood sugar from going too low. We all have it. It's built in. Just like insulin keeps blood sugar from going too high, glucagon's going to keep it from dropping below a certain threshold. Now, here's the cool thing. Glucagon has to be elevated for you to lose body fat. Glucagon has to be elevated for you to lose body fat. Glucagon and insulin cannot be elevated at the same time. And after you eat a meal, it takes 6 hours to enter a fasted state again. So most people are very rarely in a true fasted state, hardly ever. Maybe when they first wake up in the morning. So I want you to think about that, okay? Again, be mindful of your sleep. Sleep is the best diet in the world. Sleep will impact all your hormones. We all need different levels, but you'll know if you're getting enough or not. And a lot of people wear the fancy rings and all that. You can track it with that. But just be mindful of this. Hunger is a feeling. Do not cave to it. Do not cave to it. Hunger is what fat loss feels like. So to give you guys a little bit of background, these are 3 of the guys that really shaped my view of nutrition in large ways. Okay, so the guy in the top right with the glasses, that's Scott Abel. Scott was the first coach I ever hired to coach myself back in 2008. I was really drawn to him because he had such a unique approach to training and to nutrition and just to life, right? He was really hitting the mind, body, spirit. So I hired Scott for a number of years, and the main reason at the time when I hired him, I had been studying cheat days, right? There was nothing out there on cheat days, but I knew it worked because I'd been doing it for a number of years. I went to as my senior year, I went to of college, the director, the head of the nutrition program at University of Delaware, brought him like my thoughts, how to spike metabolic rate with cheat day. The guy had no clue what I was talking about. I never even heard of it. A couple years later, I'm studying stuff and I come across Scott Abel, and he actually had a DVD on that very topic, the cycle diet. He had done all the research on it. I'm like, this is my guy. He knows exactly what's up. He put the research in. So learned a lot about how flexible the metabolic rate can be, and how, Dax, get out of here, and how you can have your cake and eat it too, right? So a big part of the approach I take, even with the fasting, if I said, hey, you like to have a glass of wine here and there, nightly, whatever, if I tell you you can't ever have that again, you're going to resent that, right? You're going to resent that. A big part of forming habits is you have to be the one that makes the choice. You have to have freedom of choice. It can't be me dictating to you, just do this, right? So I want you to really keep that in mind. So a little bit more about the cycle diet. When I was doing that, guys, and I might hit a little bit of it this summer just for stuff we're working out with content. My cheat days, guys, you're talking 15 to 25,000 calories. Okay, that is not a misquote. 15 to 25,000 calories. I have a humongous appetite. I've experienced and experimented with stuff on that level, right? And you see what happens, where I would put on 12 to 15 pounds overnight, and I would look to be back at my weight or below within 3 days. So I've really immersed myself in all things that you can really imagine with nutrition. Charles Poliquin. So he taught me biosignature, which is basically, there's different sites on the body. We use a 12-site measurement system with calipers and software, which if you ever want me to do that for you, Dana or I can do that. Dana's certified in that as well. But each of the sites corresponded with different hormones. And he figured this out after doing 20,000 of these measurements and working closely with doctors and functional medicine doctors. So that's a really neat thing. So know a lot about the hormones. And John Meadows on the bottom left, John actually passed away too. So actually Charles and John are both deceased now. John, they both died like that, wasn't expected. But John had a debilitating intestinal disease. So he really focused on the micronutrients, right? What are you getting out of your nutrition? That's what I try to focus on with you guys, is the micronutrient. I could care less about carbs, fats, and proteins. Throw it out the window. It makes no difference. We want to make sure what you're eating, we're getting the micronutrients. Big reason why I'm very big into making sure you get enough fruit in your plan. So the pendulum effect. I'm sure you've probably experienced this before. This applies to pretty much everything in life as well. But if we're talking about nutrition and you've forced yourself all the way this way, let's say you cut out carbs for a long period of time. Well, guess what, guys? That pendulum's going to swing all the way back over here. It's the way the body's designed. Okay. When we do these extreme things and we don't go the way the body is supposed to go, right? You're going to experience this swing back. So when I would first compete and I was doing stuff the wrong way, I would get my weight down. The first contest I ever competed in, I was 189. Okay. It's the lightest I was, I'll never be 189 again, but I was 189. Then each successive year, let's say my starting point was 215. The next year was 225, then 235, then 245, then 255. I was experiencing pendulum. I was forcing my body to do something through improper dieting. We don't want that to happen. What I find with the fasting, it is so flexible, it keeps you in this nice window, right? Where the pendulum's not going too far this way, it's not going too far this way. So the benefit of that to you guys, you can go on vacation, you can go out and enjoy birthday celebrations. Don't worry about it. Go out and enjoy it, then get back on your plan. When you go on vacation, break your fast. eat all day if you want. You're probably not going to want to, because once you do this for like 6 weeks or so, you just realize how great you feel and how awesome your energy is. Like, it's very rare that I'll eat twice in one day now. Even on my cheat, like Sundays is my cheat day. I'll eat, Devin made a nice dinner. I'll eat that tonight and have my dessert, and then boom, go right into my next fast. Because you start realizing when you spike insulin, right? You'll really get sensitive to this stuff, and you're going to realize that, hey, my energy is not as good, all these other types of things. But anyhow, with fasting, you're not going to experience these wild swings in weight. It won't happen. It just has a compounding effect that'll continue to work. Even when you get to your set point, like your lowest possible weight for you, you're just going to cruise there. And it's pretty much through non-effort. And I'll tell you guys this, I came across one of my old InBodies. So that's what you all are using for whatever program you're doing, right? The InBody machine. That's how we track it, your body composition. So I came across one of mine from 2015. So 8 years ago. I was about 240 pounds and I was almost 14% body fat. The latest one that I did last week, and I'm telling you this, and this is not to brag to you guys at all or anything. This is because if you told me to try to get to single digit body fats in the past, I would really have to struggle with dieting to get there. Like I told you when I was competing, the last one I did, I was below 7%, and that's pretty much through non-effort. It's just through the fasting, guys. That's all it is. There's nothing special that I'm doing. It's just being consistent. So you guys got to think what I'm teaching you guys with the Panda in the black version of it, right? The 48-hour fast, 1 meal a day. I've been doing that now for 4 years, guys. And it just gets easier and easier. I feel younger than I have ever, right? I feel younger than when I was 25 and competing, when I was 30 and competing. I have no pain anywhere in my body, guys. My conditioning's better. I'm stronger. So all this cool stuff is going to happen if you commit to this and you make it a lifestyle. You can do this for 6 weeks, but see, at the end of 6 weeks, you might want to go back to the way you were eating before. You're not going to feel nearly as good. Promise you guys that. So look at it as a superpower as well. Very few in our culture will ever choose to engage us. One of my brothers asked me on, we have a group chat, me and my 3 brothers, so there's 4 of us. It's probably like, I don't know, maybe half a year ago. And we were talking about like propaganda, things of that nature. And we were talking about food, right? And he said, do you think that they have to, they'll have to use propaganda to keep this knowledge of fasting from people? I said, no, they'll never have to, because it's become so deeply instilled in people, the food pyramid, and you have to eat multiple times a day. And breakfast is the most important meal of the day. All this nonsense that people, guys, and maybe this is you, people view the way they eat and their food as like a religion, right? If I say to you, hey, let's start doing 1 meal a day, and you're not ready for it, you're gonna find every reason to argue against why this shouldn't exist. So people, in being that food is a drug, and people are not aware of that fact, are not going to, most people will never break from their typical 3, 4, 5 times a day snacking and eating. It just won't happen, right? Food is a very powerful drug. But for you guys, I want you to think of this as you're doing something elite. You're doing something that very few people are willing to do if you choose to take me up on this and fast the way I teach you. Because the people that are already doing the Panda right now, the ripped ads, you guys are already seeing the results, right? And just let it build, let it keep going. So I want you to look at it as a superpower that you have. When I fast every week, guys, and listen, this is not something that you're necessarily ever going to feel like, oh yeah, let me look forward to doing this. Every Monday when I'm doing my regular fast, my 48 into 1 meal a day, my base program, I want to have dinner. I would love to go have a cheeseburger, right? But I look at it in my head as I'm building mental muscle. I'm doing something that the guy across from me is unwilling to do, which makes me mentally tougher, and it gives me the edge, which leads me into the next thing you see here, hormesis. Hormesis is a mild stress that you can apply to the body that builds the body up, right? It's kind of like what you're doing with your workouts too. But if we can apply hormesis consistently to the brain and the body, we literally become harder to kill. That's not a joke, guys. We become harder to kill. We become more resistant to the effects of life, to disease, right? To all those stuff. So we want to apply this hormesis consistently and constantly. And that's one thing that fasting in the way that I teach you is going to do. So bloating and inflammation. Now, remember, if you joined us late, I was talking earlier, inflammation and insulin resistance are the same thing. They are the root cause of every disease known to mankind. inflammation, and insulin resistance. Your gut contains basically 80% of your neurotransmitters. Okay, and this is why it's called the gut feeling or your second brain. Most of your neurotransmitters are formed within your gut. 80% of your immune system is located within your gut. Now, guess what? If it's always inflamed because you're constantly eating, both of those things are going to be impaired. We do not want that, guys. One of the very first things I noticed, even back in 2014, when I first began fasting, and at that point I was just doing the 16-8. That was what I had learned. That was what I chose to apply at that point. Once in a while, I'd do one meal a day, and I remember thinking that was really like pushing the envelope at that point, which is funny looking back on it, but that's where I was at that point. Nobody was really teaching longer fasting. But I knew right away from taking digestive enzymes, hydrochloric acid, and I didn't need them anymore within like a week. So, man, this is really good. Something's going on here, because stress depletes a lot of your digestive enzymes. Okay, stress is going to make you more inflamed. And there's a lot of research out there which is what causes inflammation within the gut. But I can tell you one of the things, negative emotional state. And the second thing is just constantly eating, right? Your gut is not designed to constantly be taking food in. It is not. And if you don't believe me, just look at the state of health. Just look around people. Look at people, right? So both of these are going to be greatly reduced. Bloating is going to be greatly reduced. I could tell you guys, I can't remember who I was talking to recently, but it's very, very rare, unless it's like after a cheat day or whatever, that I have any gas, guys. So if you have chronic like gas and just this pressure on your gut, that's going to go away when you do this. That is the normal way to be. It's not to have gas and all this buildup all the time, this bloated feeling. So that's going to go down. Now, one of my best friends, Jabba, he's actually in the Panda book. And if you didn't get that yet, make sure you ask a coach at the gym. We'll get you your copy. So he came to me probably the first summer when I was really, so I started this exactly 4 years ago. 4 years ago with the Panda is when I created it and experimented with it the first time. And I think it was that summer, and he saw what I was doing, because at that point, you know, my body was changing pretty quickly. And he came to me and he was scared. And for this guy to come to me, those of you that know him, to admit that he was a little shaken up, I knew that he was really worried about what he was going through with his health. And I said, all right, man, let's start doing the fasting. Let's get on it. Let's get it going, right? Now, Jabba, he would always have inflammation, right? He would always be getting endoscopies, colonoscopies, and he'd get these reports back, a lot of stress, all this type of stuff. So within like 3-4 months, he's down like 30 pounds. Okay, I would say within, it might have even been 2 months, he's down like 30-35 pounds. And he had started tapering down on his Nexium, right? So antacid, which I'll go over in a second for you guys, prescription. So he goes back in for an endoscopy at the scheduled appointment, and the doctor says, man, your inflammation is pretty much gone. There's no ulcers, none of this and that. What are you doing? And so Jabba tells him, he goes, well, you know, you could pretty much, we could cut down your medication. Jabba goes, he goes, I stopped taking that like a month ago. He goes, I don't even take it anymore. So, and I have multiple examples like that of Jabba. I mean, he's the one that's in the book, but multiple people reach out to me with blood work and stories like that, like unbelievable stuff, guys, that would blow your mind with health conditions that pretty much people cure when they start doing this. Again, this is not something, I didn't invent fasting. Okay. I'm just sharing the knowledge that I've learned and that I've applied. Now, a quick note on that. When people try to put in, you always have to talk to your doctors, do your own research on this. But when people have indigestion, it's not too much stomach acid. It's too little. And there's multiple research papers that validate it. It's too little. So what happens, the food will ferment in your gut. And then these gases build up. When the esophageal sphincter opens up, it'll come up and it'll kind of burn. And you say, oh, it's too much acid. It's not too much acid. You have too little stomach acid. Stress depletes hydrochloric acid. Eating too often depletes hydrochloric acid. What happens, they put you on stuff like Nexium. It's going to compound the problem and make it even worse. Research Nexium in long-term health effects. It's terrible for you, stuff like that. So that's one of the things you can look at. We've had people go down, we do the waist measurements on you guys when you first start. I mean, we've had people in 6 weeks go down 7-8 inches on their gut. right? It's the inflammation and the bloat is going to come way down, guys. Optimizing hormones. We talked a lot about insulin, talked about cortisol. Ghrelin, your main hunger hormone, is going to continue to come down the longer you do this. Now, a couple other cool things, because people say, well, how do you, and I had a guy messaging me on Instagram this morning. He said, I don't understand how you're so muscular and you fast like this. I said, because it's just, it's not going along with the mainstream. And when I first heard of fasting way back, guys, I would poo-poo it like everybody else. Oh, I'm going to go into starvation mode and I'm going to lose muscle. Can't do it. So when you get into like the 20-hour mark of fasting, 24 hours, your growth hormone, okay, because growth hormone is going to come up with cortisol, will spike 2,000 to 3,000%, 2,000 to 3,000% over baseline. Now imagine you're doing this every single day. Okay, maybe you take off one day a week. Hey, baby Emma.
It's cool.
I don't know where he is, baby. So imagine you're doing this every single day, right? Growth hormone is really one of the hormones of youth. This is why a lot of celebrities, most notably like Sylvester Stallone, right? They use growth hormone. It's not, well, first of all, growth hormone is profound in its ability to help you burn body fat, but it keeps the skin young, keeps you looking young. So you're getting that spike every day. Growth hormone is great at helping us maintain muscle. Luteinizing hormone, when they've done studies, even in obese men, with luteinizing hormone, where these guys will do like 3 to 5 day fast, luteinizing hormone goes up 67%. You might say, who cares? That's one of the precursors to testosterone in your body. In women, you have testosterone as well. Testosterone is one of the main anabolic hormones, muscle hormones in the body. So those things get optimized, which is really cool. And in one study I was just listening to a couple of weeks ago, they were talking about, man, when you get into these longer fasts, they would actually see testosterone plummet. I'm like, oh, interesting. But what happens when you go back to eating your 1 meal a day? Boom, it would shoot up threefold over baseline. So all the stuff that I've been teaching over years, now there's research out there to validate all of this. So you're going to optimize your hormones unbelievably. And insulin, again, that's the main hormone that we can control. One of the 3 main hormones, insulin's one of them. It has a trickle-down effect to every other hormone in the body. So you're turning on what I believe is something that's primal in us, okay? And you have your fast, and something I've added recently in there is your beast, right? That's your workout. That's your physical movement, right? I want you to be training. Ideally, I have people that go through this that don't train at all, and they still do great, but it's optimized when we train. So you have fast, beast, and then feast. So I love to eat. I told you guys that. This is not fast and eat a little diet meal, okay? This is fast and then feast. And if you have a lot more weight to lose, we just do longer fasting, right? You do longer fasting. But with your feast, guys, like I want you to eat until you're full. I want you to start with your fruit, then anything that came from the ground is fair game. Your animal protein, you could have it there at your main meal. And then boom, you're done. You could have oatmeal for dessert if you want. Like that's just a simple structure I use. Besides when, there's something, when there's nothing else going on, I should say on a regular day, that's pretty much what I do. I eat till I'm full and then repeat. But you're turning on this primal thing. This is how the body was designed to function. Again, go back 1,000 years, 2,000, 3,000. Do you think that we were eating 4 or 5 times a day? No, it was very rare, right? They didn't have refrigerators. They didn't have food sources that were right there all the time. So this is tapping into something that we're designed to do, which I believe is intentionally kind of kept from the mass public, but that's a whole nother story. So I want you turning on the primal brain through your fasting. Now, something a little different. So I told you that sleep is the greatest diet in the world, right? That's where I would start with your fat loss efforts. I would make sure that you're getting enough adequate sleep. Now, I do have a lot of people. Well, if you have apnea, make sure that you are, or if you're not sure if you have apnea, first of all, I would say ask you if you're snoring at night. You could probably ask your significant other if you're not sure. But if you have apnea, make sure you're using your sleep mask. It's essential, right? It's completely essential. Now, this book, it's a good book on breathing. I read in 2020, I read this one. We release something, a hormone that I learned a lot about when I was competing called aldosterone, which helps us to retain water. Because in bodybuilding, right, we're like, how do we make it so we're flushing water out for the contest day, thinking we actually had that large, that degree of control over it. But anyway, I became familiar with it. So if we're mouth breathing at night, right, and snoring is a good indication of that, we don't release aldosterone the way we should. And what happens, I got to wake up and urinate every couple hours. So the simple thing that I do for this, and it works, I've had other people do it, put a piece of tape on your mouth. Okay, assuming you don't need your sleep mask. Again, if you need that, then make sure you're using it. Put a piece of tape over your mouth. I sleep with tape on my mouth every night. Devin will tell you that. Breathe through my nose. It's very rare that I have to get up and urinate in the middle of the night. Okay, aldosterone. We want to always optimize hormones when we can. Another thing with breathing through your nose, you can see here, it humidifies and pressurizes the air. The nitric oxide is antiviral, antifungal, antiparasitic, antibacterial. You don't get that when you breathe through your mouth, guys. Be mindful of breathing through your nose, even when you're just sitting around, right? Like that's a huge thing. Make sure that you're breathing through your nose. Your mouth is for eating and for talking, not for breathing, unless you have no other option. So that's just a little tip, little something you can try. I use the 3M medical tape. Comes in like these blue holders. You get them on Amazon pretty cheap. So that's one thing. Now let's talk about state changers. This is kind of a mind map. Well, not kind of, this is a mind map thing, because when you guys are trying to do this, especially if you're first starting out, trying to form habits, the thing that is always going to knock you off track, always with your habits, is going to be stress. Stress is always going to be the thing that knocks you off course. Now, here's the cool thing. Once you have a habit like cemented, and if something major goes on in your life, guess what? You're not going to go all the way back to the beginning. You go back to your latest formed habit. Just like a video game. Think of the old school video games you might have played. You get to a certain level, the boss man beats you. You don't go all the way back to the beginning of the game. You go back to the beginning of that level. That's the way habits work. And that's why it's so important to always try to optimize habits and to form new habits and break down bad ones. In a habit, well, I'm telling you guys about it, 21 days is the very, very short end of forming a habit. It's very rare that people can form a habit in 21 days. The average is 66 days. So I want you to keep that in mind. 66 days is the average it takes to form a habit. You could do it quicker than that, but just keep that in mind. But these are ways to change your state that I found to be very true. So when you find yourself in a negative state, and knowing that your brain, guys, is hardwired for the negative. That's the way the human brain is wired. It's a survival mechanism. So it's always looking for the negative as it is. Throw a little bit of stress into the mix, fatigue, lack of sleep, boom. It's a recipe for disaster. So Hebb's law is what gets fired together, gets wired together. The reason I'm telling you that, think of your favorite song right now. Whatever came to your head, that song became your favorite song because when you were hearing it, it was getting wired together because there was something going on in your life, a period of time or whatnot, that you just felt great about, right? You just felt great about that period of time in your life. So that song now has this special meaning to you. So you can put on music, put on your favorite song or one or two songs, that'll change your state almost instantly. So you can use that. Physical movement, it could just be a walk. Walking is actually the only form of exercise that's going to lower your stress hormones. But physical movement, so the part of your brain where the emotions come out of is the same part of your brain that physical movement taps into. So you can rob that part of your brain of these negative feelings that are coming out just by physical movement. That's part of the reason exercise makes us feel so good. You could go into a workout feeling like crap because you had a rough day or whatever, something happened. Come out and all of a sudden life's not so bad, right? The pump, as we say, the pump in the gym, the pump is the cure, right? If you're going through something, physically move. If you can't get to the gym, go for a walk, right? Go for a 10-minute walk. It'll do wonders for you. Be the bee. So when you guys get overwhelmed, or you get anxious or whatever, you're too focused on your internal, the negatives going up here, too focused on the self. Put your focus on somebody else. So being the bumblebee, and you can see right there, the tattoo that I have, what that means really is pollinate, right? Just give love, reach out to somebody, put the focus on somebody else, shoot them a text message, write them a handwritten card, give them a phone call, and just say, hey, you know what? I appreciate you. I really liked what how you've been a good friend to me. You've been a great brother, whatever it is. Reach out to your spouse, put the focus on somebody else. And the last one I'm going to share with you right now is journaling or writing. So You have to remember with the brain, emotions and logic don't mix. They come from two different parts of the brain. You got the mammal brain and you got the human brain, okay, which is logical thinking. The mammal is emotion. They don't mix. So if all these things are going on, take out pen and paper and just start writing. Cursive, ideally, if you can, and just start writing. Now, what happens, you bring clarity to the situation, you slow down the speed of thought, because when we get emotional, what happens? The thought process speeds up. So we want to slow that down, guys. So you start journaling and you bring clarity to it, right? You bring the human part of your brain back online. And journaling, guys, is so powerful too, because you can look back again. I don't care who you are. You're going to go through phases, right? Where you feel like you're in a great mindset and all that. And then you're going to go through phases, man, where nothing feels like it's working right. Now, I know that happens to me, and it goes through cycles, right? It goes through cycles. I believe this happens to everybody. But you can look back at your journal, and if you're putting like how you felt in there or whatever, and say, oh man, it is possible to feel like that. What was I doing then? And your journal could be a log of that. You don't even have to do it every day, even if you did it once a week. But if you're going through something that's bothering you or whatever, just take out pen and paper and write about it. Don't worry about what you write. Nobody else cares about reading it. Nobody else is going to read it. That's a huge thing. So those are ways that you guys can change your state. So challenge, whatever Facebook group you're in, whatever one of our programs you're doing right now, I would challenge you, especially if you're just starting out with the shredder, put a progress picture in your Facebook group every week, right? So if you knew that, hey, Mondays, I got to post a picture in my group, that's going to help motivate you a little bit more, guys. That's going to, we always want to look for leverage. How can we gain leverage? And pain is a great leverage. It's a great lever, right? So if you know that, hey, I didn't make any progress, I'm going the other way, and you got to post that picture and you commit to doing something like that, it's going to be painful, right? It's going to be painful. I would also, along those same lines, tell people what you're doing. Tell them about your fat loss efforts. Tell them what you're trying to do. Most people don't use their own willpower, but willpower is a very finite resource. So use their willpower. Tell them what you're going to do, because what's going to happen, they're going to ask you, hey, how you doing with that? How you doing with the panda? How you doing with your fasting? Use their willpower. Next week, guys, we're going to go over a lot of mindset stuff, because this is the game up here. Inner dialogue. This is it right here. When you are dieting or trying to do fat loss, it should be all out war. You got to use everything you got to achieve the goal. But if I knew back when I first started competing how much of a mindset and how much of a spiritual game, for lack of a better term, dieting is, it would have been so much simpler for me, right? I had to figure that out over the years, but it's all on the inside. It's not don't look at it as suffering, right? Look at it as struggle. You're doing mental and spiritual resistance training, okay, when you choose to go down this path. And that's the last thing before I go for questions. Pretty much every major world religion ever has taught fasting. It was always part of the scripture or whatnot. And we got away from it, right? Especially in this country, you get away from it, but it taps into something deeper, because you can no longer self-medicate with food if you choose to do this, right? Now, all of a sudden, you got to turn inward, and you got to really reflect, and you got to be aware of these voices in your head, the inner dialogue, which I'm going to go over a lot next week, because when you get your inner dialogue right, guys, that's what's going to create your reality. All right, so we went over a lot tonight. If you have questions, just unmute yourself, or you can use the little hand. Actually, do the little hand thing, so we don't have everybody calling out at once if there's questions. Do the little hand emoji, and I will call on you, and you can unmute yourself. So let's see. Linda, you still have a question?
Hi, can you hear me, Kyle?
I hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. I'm taking everything in, and I want to say hi to everybody. One of the issues I deal with a lot, as you know, last year and a half, I had breast cancer. The medicine that I take, one of the highest side effects I have is sleeplessness and hot sweats. I still struggle with the sleeplessness, and I know with the fasting, I'm going to get more energy. And unfortunately, I've had to rely on either Tylenol nighttime, Advil nighttime. I don't want that. I don't want to do that. Can you suggest anything else? Because this is a really tough situation for me.
Sure. So the first thing I would take if we're talking about supplements for sleep would be magnesium.
Okay.
Everybody should be on magnesium. There's too many chemical processes in the body that magnesium impacts, but you're not going to get magnesium through food just because of the quality of the soil nowadays. So
Okay.
the one we have at the gyms, it's like we actually just came out with our own line too, but if you're buying it somewhere else, guys, you always want to make sure magnesium, whatever form it is, ends in the letter ATE. You want it to be a chelated form of magnesium. Otherwise, it's garbage. Your body's not going to be able to use it. So magnesium, stress depletes magnesium, but magnesium helps us deal with stress. So it's this cycle. And magnesium helps us get into the parasympathetic state, which is the state of the nervous system you have to be in to sleep and to recover, to digest. So that's one thing. And then pure sleep. Let me see if I can pull up the site so I can share the link with you guys real quick. It's a new one I've been trying by Cliff High, and it's really good. And it's not like melatonin, guys, that type of stuff, not the best for you. A lot of people misunderstand that. But this product is really good. So I'm going to post this. I do a scoop of this at night, and it puts you into like a night. It doesn't make you groggy or anything like that, but it puts you into a nice sleep. So I'm going to post. There you go. Okay, Linda,
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
you're welcome. Anything else you got?
I'll have more, but that was it for today. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, we got.
I just lost that post. Can you send it again?
It's in the chat. If you go
Okay.
to the chat, okay. All right, Patty, what's going on?
So, hi, everyone. Linda, I can totally relate to that. I take something similar to that, if not the same thing. And the fasting completely takes away the hot flashes and the sweats and everything. So the fasting completely changes everything. If I eat before 16 hours, I can feel all of the effects of those drugs. And when I fast, I don't feel any of them. I still struggle with sleep a lot. But I've been doing a couple magnesium before bed and it's been helping. It's sporadic, but it helps. But fasting changes everything.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to that.
Patty's been through it, guys, and it's amazing. She could tell you her story one time, but it's amazing. She just told you, right? Like she was going through it with cancer and all that, and living testament. The fasting has really been cool to watch what she's been able to do with that as far as symptoms and just recovery. Thanks for sharing that, Patty.
Well,
Awesome. What else we got, guys? Any other questions? Does anybody have questions about how to break the fast or whatever, what you should eat? Is everybody clear on the juice formula with the salts?
Oh, one question, Kyle. I hope I don't mind you don't mind if I throw this out. With the juice, when I do the fast, I fill up 36-ounce jug. And I try to chug as much as possible. Is there such a thing as drinking too much of it?
No, not really.
Okay.
You won't be able to drink too much of it.
Okay.
What else we got, guys? Okay, if there's no other questions, guys, I will let you get back on with your Sunday evening. So if you're just starting out and you're doing the shredder, I would recommend you go right into a 48-hour fast. Hold on, Giselle's got a question. What's up, Giselle? You've got to unmute yourself, okay?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Great. So I missed the first part as far as using a gallon of water or drinking a lot with the juice
Okay,
or some sort of concoction. I'm not
Yeah.
sure about that.
so with the juice, let me copy it here and post it into the chat for you guys. And make sure, Giselle, that you get a copy of the book. If you don't have it yet, just ask a coach at the gym.
Okay, yeah, I need one. I'll ask someone tomorrow.
They'll hook you up with it. So with the juice, guys, just a reminder, it's 32 to 40 ounces typically. But I want you doing that multiple times a day. And you're gonna be putting in either sea salt. I've recently switched over to Celtic salt. It's got more micronutrients in it. Lower new salt. There's other forms too, and that's basically just your potassium. And then your baking soda, which is great for kidney function and making the body more alkaline. So it will take you a little bit maybe to get used to it, but that's That's what you want to be drinking. Even if you weren't fasting, I would say get on that stuff. Like it's just, most people are very deficient in sodium. So it's a really good thing to be on.
What kind of schedule do most of us follow when it comes to the 20-hour of fasting, like timeline? I'm kind of trying to figure that out.
Yeah, so what I would recommend for pretty much everybody, what I recommend to start is I would jump right into the black version of the Panda, which is a 48-hour fast, and then you go 1 meal a day. So like typically what I recommend is, okay, Sundays, do whatever you want or whatever. And then when you're done eating tonight, let's say you were going to do that, you go right into a 48-hour fast. You wouldn't eat again until Tuesday night. Now we have people that go longer than that. People that do multiples, but I like to do that because it builds your confidence and knocks out any fear you have about fasting, right? It's going to get results. If we're just doing like, 16-hour fast, 20, it's not going to do much for you guys. I have people that do that all the time. Like I get a lot of people that message me online. Oh, I'm doing 1 meal a day and nothing's moving. It's not, usually you got to go longer than that. Then you got to start building momentum, especially women, guys. And it used to be thought, like the stuff I studied early on back in 2014 was, oh, women can't fast longer than like 12 hours, 13 hours. I found out to be the exact opposite. Women do better with longer fasting and they can actually deal with it a lot better. Just mentally than men, it seems like, for the most part. But that's because it's affecting the hormones so much. Like I have women that'll do the Panda that have been stuck for years. They do every diet in the book and they can't move. They can't, and I mean, a starvation diet, it's 1,100 calories, 1,000 calories. And they come and do the Panda and they'll drop 20. There's nothing else like it, just because what you're doing with the insulin. But that's what I would recommend. I would recommend you start with the black version. It's page 66 in the book. It's a 48-hour fast, and then you go into 1 meal a day. Anybody in this group and this call can tell you it sounds a lot harder than it is.
And what do you suggest other than fruits? Like that's going to be in the Panda book?
Yeah, it's all in there, but you start with fruit, okay?
Mhm.
Okay, what kind or how much? And then your main, and this is when you're at home. If you're out to eat, do whatever, enjoy yourself. But then anything that came from the ground is fair game. So that could be veggies, that could be potatoes, sweet potatoes, rice, beans, whatever. And then if you want to have your animal protein source, right? Because you already cut back on animal protein just by the nature of the fasting, right? So if people were just eating protein all day, like when I was competing in bodybuilding, I'd be eating a ton of protein. Protein makes the body more acidic, animal protein. So there are health implications, but you're already going to be cutting back on it just by the nature of this. So you'd have whatever you like my typical meal would be a couple sweet potatoes, probably broccoli, some hummus to dip it in, and then, a couple eggs, maybe 5, 6 eggs. So not a couple, more than that. And then maybe a burger, like a grass-fed burger. And then I'll do like my oatmeal for dessert. So I got a big appetite, but the point being, I want you to eat fruit and then go into your feast, right? And then you're good to go. So you don't have to worry about measuring anything. Don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Eat until you're full.
All right. Thanks for explaining that.
You're welcome. Yeah, and as you go through it, just ask questions, okay?
Okay.
Any other questions, guys?
Hey, Kyle, it's Tyrone.
What's up, Action?
What's happening? Quick question for you on breaking your fast with bone broth. What's your thoughts?
You can do it. I do that sometimes. Sometimes the bone broth will kind of coat your stomach. Some people ease back into, or like to ease in like that. I don't do it that often anymore, just because, I don't want to say laziness, but I didn't really notice a difference myself between doing that and not doing it. But it is something that you can do. And that brings up a point too, before I make sure that answers your question, guys. When you first start doing this, and even sometimes now it'll happen. Most people have a lot of stuck fecal matter, literally a lot of stuck shit, for lack of a better term, in your intestines. So a lot of times when you break these longer fasts, you might have to run to the bathroom right away. And that could go on for a while, meaning that might go on for months. That's totally normal, but you're healing. You got to think of how long you've been doing stuff the other way. You're literally healing your system. Okay. Yeah, but actually you can do that. Sometimes I like to do pure cranberry juice for the iodine, not like the sweetened one, but pure cranberry, doing 4 ounces of that. So those things are good to do at the beginning of breaking your fast if you want.
Yeah, thanks. My mother-in-law makes she does it from scratch. 48 hours in a crock pot for the bone broth.
Nice. Yeah, that's good, man. Enjoy it then if you have it.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Welcome. Anything else, guys?
Yeah, Kyle, it's Kevin. I got a quick question.
Yeah, what you got?
When you break the fast, how much time is your eating window, right? Because you're like, it's a meal, but you get to sit at the table, we need for 6 hours. What's a reasonable amount of time to consume?
Within 90 minutes. I don't want you stressing it, like,
Right.
I don't want you stressing it's, oh man, I'm on the clock, or it's gotta be exactly 48 hours or 24 hours. There's a difference between, saying, oh, here's my meal and it's 4 hours spread out. That's not a meal, right? Like, so when you start and you go through, like, okay, look at dessert as your appetizer, it's your main meal, and then dessert, if you, the fruit as your appetizer, main meal, and then your dessert, if you wanted to have some healthy there, like oatmeal with peanut butter, whatever. Then when you're
Right.
done with that, you should be full, and then that'll be it. But usually within, I'm usually down at 75, 90 minutes if I'm moving slow. But and that brings up a point too, guys. I put in the book, and part of the reason I told you about the cycle diet, take a day a week and do whatever you want. Do whatever you want. Okay. Anything goes, right? And it'll course correct over time. But when you do that, let's say you're having all these cravings. Now, what I don't want you guys doing is binging. That means you're not in control, right? I want you to be the one that plans it. Hey, you know what? Sundays, I'm going to go to IHOP. I'm going to have donuts. I'm going to have boom, 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 whatever. You're still in control, or you planned it out. And the brain, needs that for confidence, prediction, and response. I want you to plan it out. But does that make sense about the timing, Kevin?
Yeah, that makes sense. And again, if we do, like, say, a 60 to 90 minute feeding window after each fast of 48 and then 24 hour, but the same amount of time to eat each time.
Roughly, yeah. Yeah, obviously, if you go to eat, it might be a little different or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, you'll
Yeah.
get into a nice rhythm.
Great. Okay. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Well. All right, guys, if there's nothing else, I'll post this recording in your groups. Let's get off to a good start if you're just starting out, and the dads and the pandas, let's keep it rolling, keep it going. Coming into a good time of year to lose fat, guys. So, stay focused, stay on it. Remember, it's all out war in your mind. You got to go into this, go into it. Don't feel sorry for yourself. Get after it, get healthy, post questions, reach out. I think you all have my cell phone. Otherwise, I'll be reposting them into the group, my cell phone. Reach out to me at any time or ask any of the coaches. Okay. Thanks for coming in tonight, guys. You guys have a great night. All right. See you later.